When you think guitar solos, especially in rock music, what comes to mind? I think for a lot of people, it's typically a combination of huge guitar tone and soaring bends and technical ability and all those types of things. And when you think of the top guitar solos of all time, especially in rock music, you know, they're listed Comfortably Numb and Hotel California and Stairway to Heaven. It kind of reinforces that belief. Now, it's not a coincidence that rock guitar solos tend to be a bit formulaic, especially when you have producers out there that believe that hit songs should have hit guitar solos, and that needs to fit in a certain mold and be played a certain way and sound a certain way. So, now, listen, you can find obscure guitar solos and weird guitar solos in obscure music, of course, free jazz, fusion, places like that. But if you're a budding guitar player that has a penchant for wanting to be creative, but also play commercial rock music, you typically find yourself in one of those two camps. You either have to play the formulaic rock music in the music that you want to play, or you have to go play the obscure music to be the creative that you want to be. So what I'm going to give you is 10 examples of weird or unique guitar solos that appear in popular music. That way, I'm going to teach you that it's always okay to take the road less traveled, and I'm also going to give you some insight into the actual solos themselves so we can learn something along the way. All right, number one is Testify by Rage Against the Machine. Now, Tom Morello is one of my favorite guitar players because when it comes to the guitar solo, you really never know what you're going to get. Tom Morello is one of the most accomplished guitar players you'll find. He can do all the traditional playing and he can shred with the best of them. But sometimes when it comes time for the solo and you listen to it, you're not even sure what's going on. You're just left scratching your head, wondering if it even is guitar. Now, despite the myth that he hides behind his effects or he uses a lot of effects to create these sounds, it's just a myth. He actually has a very modest pedal board. He uses a standard type of guitar, a Telecaster or a Strat, in through his little pedal board through a Marshall amp. And these solos just come from his creativity. His ability to think differently than everybody else. Now, in this particular solo, what he does is he actually unplugs the guitar, takes the lead of his guitar cable, and touches it on the bridge of his guitar. This creates kind of a ground loop, which then he manipulates with a wah pedal to create that sound. And it is just like nothing you've ever heard before. Now, the rest of the track is actually this kind of big, basic rock track with a cool riff that he's soloing over. And he could have easily just played a regular guitar solo, but he chose to do something really wild and different. So here we go. Let's have a listen to it. All right, number two is I'm Only Sleeping by the Beatles. This is from the 1966 album Revolver, which was a big part of the transition from simple Beatles pop songs to the juggernaut recording psychedelic powerhouse that the Beatles became later on in their later albums. So they really started experimenting around this time with doing different things that people hadn't done before. And one of those things George Harrison did where the solo on this song was he actually played it and they actually recorded it backwards. So they ran the track for him backwards and he recorded it. And then when you hear the actual track, it's played forward, which is actually the solo in reverse. Now, they didn't just randomly do this. He actually planned to do this and he kept working on the solo so that when it was played backwards, it sounded exactly the way he wanted it to sound. Now, given the nature of the song and the lyrics and the actual sleepy nature of it, the solo fits in perfectly, especially when you think of the narrative of dreaming and being asleep and things happening backwards. It was a brilliant idea and way, way ahead of its time. So great job by George Harrison there. Let's have a listen.
Taking my time, lying there and staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sleepy feeling. Please don't spoil my...
All right, number 3 on our list is Paranoid Android by Radiohead. This is from the 1997 classic album OK Computer. Now, Radiohead is no stranger to pushing the limits of what's acceptable in mainstream rock music. Now, this song is no exception. This song is over 6 minutes long, which is long for a hit song, let's call it, for a radio song. And the solo is a lot different than what you would expect to hear as well. Now, there's no trickery in this solo. He really just plays. There's no reversing or touching the bridge with the lead or anything like that. He really just plays, but the way that it's different is the way that he plays it. So he's using traditional guitar techniques, but a typical rock guitar solo will try to fit the song. It'll try to rhythmically fit in. It'll stay within the key, but his solo here, it's rhythmically disjointed, and the notes he chooses are outside the key, and the sound is angry and frustrated, and it's almost like his guitar is screaming sometimes. It's a perfect example of how to use traditional guitar techniques to play a very non-traditional guitar solo. Let's have a listen. And I should point out what also is cool about that solo is that it's in 7. So it's, a bar of 4, bar of 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So it throws things off a little bit there too, because nothing lands exactly where you would expect it to with a traditional rock song. So that's awesome. So good. All right, number 4 on our list is 21st Century Schizoid Man, which is a song by King Crimson. And it's from their 1969 debut titled In the Court of the Crimson King. Now, Robert Fripp, who's the guitar player, has always been way ahead of his time. He's highly inventive, and he even developed his own new standard tuning. And he actually came up with a tape delay system known as Frippertronics, which is actually a precursor to what we know now as looping. So he was one of the first people to actually be doing looping live using tape and what he called Frippertronics. So way ahead of his time. Now, despite his avant-garde style of playing and his affinity for free jazz and these weird types of music, he also contributed to huge name artists like David Bowie, Blondie, and Daryl Hall. So he was able to kind of walk that line between obscure music and hit music. So even though he was only 23, the ideas and playing on this album in particular were way, way ahead of its time. You think in 1969, a lot of his contemporaries were still just basically playing blues-based music, playing just those blues licks were kind of recycled and used in what we would consider like new rock music, in that British new wave of rock music that came over. But Fripp's solo here is dissonant, it's aggressive, there's really no trace of traditional blues licks or anything like that, which is interesting for a guitar player that young. So despite how bizarre this solo is, Guitar World magazine actually ranked it number 82 on their list of 100 greatest guitar solos of all time. So, that's a huge plus for him, showing that, even though it was a weird, unique guitar solo, still highly regarded even years and years later. So let's have a listen. 5 on our list is Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden. This is released in 1994 on their 4th album, Super Unknown. Now, if you know anything about Soundgarden, you know that they're considered to be one of the big 4 bands of grunge music from the early 90s, along with Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Alice in Chains. Now, out of those 4 bands, Soundgarden definitely embraced progressive elements more than their contemporaries. This included different tunings for the guitars and playing things in different odd time signatures. Now, for instance, when this solo is being played, it's over a riff that's in a 9-beat phrase. It's a measure of 4 and then a measure of 5. So it kind of gives this uneven, off-kilter sound to begin with, and then we have the solo over the top of it. Now, the song was a massive hit despite the odd time signatures and weird guitar solos, and it still remains one of the most played songs from the 1990s. Lead guitarist Kim Thayil plays a solo here with long delays and long drawn-out bends, and it kind of counters the sound that's going on underneath it, which is the riff, which is a very rigid sounding riff. So we have just kind of this counterpoint of the ethereal guitar solo over the top of that kind of solid riff that repeats over and over. Now, despite how weird the guitar solo is, this is another entry on Guitar World's Top 100 Guitar Solos of All Time, and it came in at number 63. So let's have a listen. All right, number 6 on our list is Hello Time Bomb by Matthew Goodband. This is the Canadian band's third album, Beautiful Midnight, released in 1999, and the song was nominated for a Juno Award, which is the Canadian Grammys, for anybody who doesn't know, and is one of the most played songs in Canada for years and years and years. It was a huge, huge hit. Now, you would think for a big hit like that, it would have a pretty traditional guitar solo, but this might be the oddest guitar solo of the bunch on the list. Faced with a straight-ahead rock riff to play over, guitarist Dave Genn could have easily made the choice to put on his Guitar Hero hat and just shred and, do the most traditional thing and show off his chops and do whatever he could. But he actually went so far the other way. So this solo is using an analog delay pedal. And so what he's doing is he's turning the knobs on the solo to manipulate it. Now, if you go watch the music video, he actually even does it in the video. He just holds out the guitar pedal and he's manipulating the knobs. So you can actually just create a wild cacophony of sounds doing that, and that's what he does in this solo. I actually have a video here on the channel here on Music 214 about analog guitar pedals, and you can actually watch that video and show you how to actually make those sounds as well. So it's a pretty interesting thing. So you could almost classify this as a guitar pedal solo instead of an actual solo, but it still works, and it's a wild, wild solo. Let's have a listen to it. All right, number 7 on our list is Owner of a Lonely Heart by the band Yes. This is a song from their 11th studio album, 90125. Now, Yes established themselves in the 1970s as one of the pioneers of progressive rock, or prog rock as we know it today. And this is a genre that was well known for their long songs, fantasy lyrics, odd time signatures, just basically everything that flew in the face of commercial rock. And these bands that included, also Rush, Genesis, King Crimson, a lot of these bands, even though they wrote music that was never going to be commercially successful, the bands themselves had really successful careers because they built a following of fans that just really loved their music. Now, after breaking up in 1981, Yes reformed in 1983, but it was an almost completely new band aside from the singer. Now, they decided to move in a more commercial direction, more radio-friendly direction at this point, and Owner of a Lonely Heart went to number 1, and it was the band's only number 1 single in their whole entire career, which spanned over 50 years. Now, despite using traditional techniques on the solo, guitarist Trevor Rabin used a harmony on top of the notes, which was a fifth above. So he's using a harmony effect on top of everything he was playing. So that created this kind of weird effect anyway, but then also created some weird note choices on top of that as well. So again, it was another example of using traditional techniques, but creating kind of a weird solo. So let's have a listen to this one. So you can hear there how he could have definitely played with a more traditional tone and played a real Guitar Hero type solo, but just the creativity in him, he just wanted to play something a little different and make something a little unique, and it definitely stands out because of that harmony effect that's on the guitar. All right, number 8 on our list is Little Sister by Queens of the Stone Age. This was the first single off of their 2005 album Lullabies to Paralyze, which was the follow-up to their hit album Songs for the Deaf. Now, this is another song that features a straight-ahead rock riff as the foundation for the solo, which means the guitar player really could have taken a more traditional approach to the solo, but that's not the choice that's made here. Now, singer and guitarist Josh Homme does the solo on this song, and basically what happens in this solo is that he's using an octave effect on a pretty lo-fi sounding guitar in terms of the tone. And after the second chorus, he's playing the little catchy slide riff that happens and then goes right into the solo using the same effect essentially that he was using on this little catchy riff. The combination of the lo-fi tone, his unique outside note choices where he lands in certain places on notes you wouldn't expect him to, his odd phrasing. Josh somehow almost makes the guitar solo sound like it's backwards. It has a real kind of backwards reverse sound similar to I'm Only Sleeping by the Beatles that we talked about, but it's not. It's played forward. So again, just creative choices. And the solo actually serves as the outro for the song too, so it's the last thing that happens. So it's not in the middle of the song like a traditional guitar solo would be. He actually finishes the song with it. So let's have a listen to this solo. All right, number 9 on our list is Cinnamon Girl by Neil Young. And some of you might be thinking, why is this on the list? It's not that weird, but this is another track from 1969, and this solo could not be more different than Robert Fripp's that we looked at earlier. This solo is known as the one-note solo, and it really is. Neil Young really just plays a D note over and over on this solo. Now, the aggressive one-note solo and down-tuned guitars were no doubt a huge inspiration for the grunge music that would come 20 years later and those guitar players that would form that sound. And although it contains only one note, Neil Young does insist that every note is different, that every single one of those Ds that he plays is with purpose and intent, and they are different if you really listen to it. Now, this really proves that you don't need a bunch of notes to make an interesting solo. You don't even really need two. So let's have a listen to this one-note solo. So there you go, a one-note guitar solo. Doesn't get much more unique than that, and there's not a lot of people can pull that off, so well done. All right, number 10 on our list, our final entry on this list of 10 weird, unique guitar solos is the song Zero by the Smashing Pumpkins. This is from their third album, 1996's Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Zero is widely regarded as one of the best, if not the best, Smashing Pumpkins song, and it was a huge, huge hit, charting all the time in 1996. The song features a great fuzz-laden guitar riff. That's also the foundation for the solo. Like many Smashing Pumpkins songs, they really used that big muff fuzz to really create a particular sound. Now, when it was time for the guitar solo, again, like other entries on this list, it's a pretty straight-ahead rock riff, and they really could have just went the direction of a traditional solo, but they could not have gone more different. So guitarist James Iha delivers one of the weirdest sounding guitar solos you'll ever hear, and especially on a commercial rock track. I mean, it's how they got away with it, I don't know. I guess the Smashing Pumpkins were just that big that they could kind of play whatever, but the average band is not going to get away with playing a weird solo like this on a song that successful. So I don't really know what's going on here effects wise, and after doing a little research, I don't think anybody really knows what's going on here, but I do know that the whammy pedal, the Digitech whammy pedal, is kind of the core of the sound, and then there's some modulation, some harmony, and then just the really creative guitar playing by James on this track. So you know, some heavy gain, lots of effects, and it just culminates in one of the weirdest guitar solos you'll ever hear. So let's have a listen. This is Zero by the Smashing Pumpkins. Just one of the strangest guitar solos you'll ever hear. So yeah, it's a lot of inspiration there. Thanks for hanging out here at Music 214 and watching this video of 10 weird/unique guitar solos. Stay tuned for more videos like this. And I don't like to do top 10s. I don't consider these top 10s. They aren't the top 10. It's just 10 examples that hopefully inspire you to go check out some new music and hopefully show you that some of these things are okay. You don't have to always do things the way that they've always been done. So again, thanks for checking it out. Subscribe. Click the bell to let you know when we're going to post new videos. We're going to post new videos all the time. So again, thanks for the support, and we'll see you for the next one.